let's start building our app. We'll start by creating our new app using Adonis new command. To have Adonis command, you should have the Adonis CLI, right? So if you don't have, go to AdonisJs.com and click Quick Start. Now we can get npm I -g and at AdonisJs /CLI. npm is a node package manager that comes with Node.js. So if you don't have Node.js installed, you should go to nodejs.org and install Node.js tool. I'm going to use XAMPP as well. So go to apachefriends.org and install the XAMPP. Since I'm already using XAMPP, I can use this as our MySQL server, right? So that we can go to localhost phpMyAdmin and create database and check the tables, right? Just install this and just install this Adonis CLI as well. All right, cool. I'll start with creating a new application. So Adonis new, name of our app will be hacker. Let's say news, whatever. This will install the new application in our machine. Since I started our MySQL server, which means XAMPP, we can go to localhost phpMyAdmin, right? So if I go to localhost phpMyAdmin, this is the MySQL thing that comes with XAMPP, right? So this is how it will look when you install newly. Or you can use any other XAMPP server like MySQL Workbench or something like that. Alright, let's create a new database called news. Right? It should be empty, right? So yeah, let's wait for this to get installed. Cool, it is now installed. So we can go to news and we can open with our code editor. I'm using Visual Studio Code, so I'm opening it with Visual Studio Code. Let's clear this up. Right, before moving on, as we know, we are using MySQL. We have to install the MySQL package, npm I MySQL, which will install a package of MySQL so that we can connect our application with the database. Alright, it gets installed. Now we can wait for no, we can check our application. If we go ahead and open this application, this is the default structure of our application, default structure of Adonis application. This is the entire application, right? So basically, this is a full application that comes with templating engine, controllers, middlewares, and everything. Alright, so inside resources we'll be having the views, and pretty much the folder structure are very simple. If you don't know about the folder structures, you can go to AdonisJs.com and click get started, and you can read about the basic folder structures here before moving on. So I'll be teaching you by the course, but if you are very curious about knowing things before building it, you can go ahead and read. Alright, cool. The important thing we need to know is in .env we are going to set up our database. Since this DB connection is responsible for what DB we are going to use, which is MySQL in our case. Just change this to MySQL, and DB database will be the database name of our application, which will be the news. Alright, that's all we need to do. And the password and DB user will be the same. Since when you install new XAMPP, you don't need to give any password unless you create a user with a password. Otherwise it will be the same. Let's say if you are using anything before, like MySQL Workbench or something like that, you need to give this authentication credentials, credentials of that server. That's all we need. Before moving on, inside database we'll be having the migration, which means the tables inside our database, right? So inside there, when you create new application, it comes with users table and the tokens table. In here, we have username, email, and password, right? So I'm going to rename this as name, and we don't need unique logic in name, since uh, a user can many users can have the same name, right? So I just removing that. Cool. Let's migrate this. To migrate things, we can run Adonis migration run. This will migrate our tables to the database. Cool. If I go ahead and see here, we have users, tokens, and Adonis schema. Users tables will have the name, email, and password, and tokens will have the content of user ID and everything. So we are not going to use this table anyway. Adonis schema is this table that is generated automatically to show that we have this number of tables in our application. So it will help to migrate our DB, rollback, and everything. Basically that, something like that, right? So that's all we need here. We'll move on to write our routes. Inside start, we'll be having app, kernel, and routes. This is inside routes where we are going to write our routes. As you can see, we have one route. Let's clean this up a little bit. As you can see, we have our index route, right? So this index route is responsible for showing the index page. So let's start our server so that we can see. So let's run Adonis serve and --dev flag. Right now, this our application gets started, and if I go ahead to port 3333, we could see this page, right? This is basically the welcome templating engine. Welcome page come from resources views welcome.edge. .edge is the extension of templating engine that comes with Adonis, right? So we have our own templating engine, unless like when you are working with Express, you might need to install something like initialization or handlebars or something of your choice, right? This is basically, like, in my point of view, Edge templating engine is simply like a Laravel blade, or if you are used to Express, you might think of as a handlebar kind of a syntax, right? Cool. That's all we need here. This is the page that comes from the welcome.edge, right? So this is what our logic all goes. So route.get, this is how you write get request, right? So we have, if you don't know about HTTP request, you should know about them, right? So get, since if you know JavaScript, you might know all these things, right? So I don't need to explain this up. All right. So let's say if we can get request, let's say we'll say a name, right? So the second argument, you can pass a function, right? So where we can write to whatever we want. So basically we can give something like, let's say, return response dot send. Let's say my name is John Doe. One thing to note is you don't know what response is, so we need to define this as a response. Alright, so define this, right? This request, response, and everything comes from a Node.js thing. If you are used to Express, you might know that rec and res will be there, right? So Adonis built something differently on top of it, and we can use for multiple number of things. If I go ahead and check, since we changed the code, it detects that we are changing the code, and we don't need to restart the server. just we can go ahead and check our name, right? So it's simple as that. So what about the dynamic routes? That too is very simple. Let's copy this one and paste this here, and to say that it is a dynamic route, we need to put the colon, and we need to say that this is the dynamic route. How do we can detect this dynamic routes inside our application? It comes with something called params, which is going to get the parameters here. Instead of saying that my name is John Doe, we'll give a template literal, and we can say my name is params dot name. This name is the name of this. Let's say if you are going to give something like age, you have to define what you have to show, right? So if you want to show the age, you can say params.age, but in our case we are going to show the name. All right, and now if we go ahead and check name, it will return my name is John Doe. But if I go to say name / Ironman, my name is Ironman, since we are writing this up, right? Cool. This is how the routes work. You can have different HTTP requests with the same name, but you can't have two same requests with the same URL. That's the core logic of it, right? So let's delete them up. Right, let's start by creating the controllers. Let's start by writing our authentication, right? So it is weird to start with authentication, but it will be fun to learn authentication, right? So I am opening up the inside terminal in VS Code. You can still use this and stop the server and run this command. Alright, so let's start with Adonis make controller. Make controller will create the controller. Auth controller, right? So I'm going to create auth controller, which will be used for HTTP request, right? And we are going to write routes basically with two different route groups. I'll say what we are going to do, right? So let's start with writing a register route where we are going to check for our controller, and we are going to look for the method called index. At last, after writing this URLs, finally after getting to learn about middlewares, we are going to change this as route groups, so that we can have two route groups for authentication needed routes and authentication not needed routes, right? So basically that's the logic of it, and we can have that later. Cool. If I go ahead and check inside app, inside controllers, I have auth controller. So we can create models, controllers, views, everything with Adonis make command, right? So if we go ahead to AdonisJs installation, basically you can go to controllers here, and you can read how to create controllers, right? Cool. Let's return a view here. So as I mentioned that we are going to write an index method. That's what we defined here, right? Let's return a view. Return view dot render. Let's say auth dot register. Remember, you don't know what view is, so we need to define that, right? So this should be defined here as view so that it knows we are going to use the templating engine edge. Now we can guess that we need to create that view, right? So we can create that view. There is two ways to create our view. So since we are defining that auth.register, we need to create a folder called auth and we need to create register.h, right? So how we can do that? So we can make Adonis make view and we can say auth/register, right? It creates auth and register.h, or you can manually create that. There will be no problem for us, right? So if you forgot this, just you can go ahead and write views, create a folder called auth and create a file called register.h. So if you don't want that auth folder, you just can create register so that you can create just register. Cool. Now it will create register outside the auth folder. In our case, we are not going to do that. As simple as that. Alright. So that's all we need. Let's check this register page. Go to auth register.h and let's give a h1 of register page. Save that. If we go ahead and check our application, oops, actually, you know what, we missed something. Auth.register. Cool. Let's refresh here and we can see the register page. Alright, so let's create the layouts. Alright, layouts is basically the fact that we'll be having the headers, footers and basic styling like CSS files included in one single page, instead of, let's say, when you're creating multiple hundreds of pages here and having the CSS file in every page. Like this makes no sense, right? That's why we need a layouts page where we can extend them and use them in multiple pages. Basically, it's reusability, right? So for that, inside views, we'll create a folder called layouts. Inside layouts, we'll be creating a folder called app.h. Remember, we can app.h. Remember, we can create here using make view or something similar like this manually. Let's name this hacker news, and to include the style we can use style tag like this. You can write inline styles like internal style like this, excuse me, or you can link external CSS like link rel like this. But basically, Adonis has a convention of putting the assets inside public folder. So inside the public folder, we'll be having our CSS and JS files. So we can include here using the interpolation syntax and style. And basically, like say style.css, we'll look for style.css inside public. So this one. This is the logic of the application. We are going to use Bootstrap in this application since we don't want to write multiple, CSS, so that we don't waste most of our time. So get bootstrap.com and copy this link. Once again, I'm going to just copy this link since I'm going to use interpolation syntax. Copy that. If you want to use something like Bootstrap, the jQuery thing, JavaScript thing inside Bootstrap, like making that hamburger icon work, you need to include this as well. Since we want to use that, we can do that by putting script tag and copying it. In my case, I'm not going to do that since we don't need to care about that. So how we can extend this? We should need to say this file should be extended, right? So we have to say that this page should have the data coming from other files, which will be the section thing. All right, so section at colon section and the name of our section, which will be, I'm naming it content. You can name whatever you want. I'm naming it as content. In this way we can say that the content should be come from here. So let's say if you want to use this here, you can say add layout and layouts.app, which will look for a folder called layouts inside app.h, and we can say section block, right? Add section and content. Basically this putting the HTML inside here should look for will be rendered from this layout file. Basically the styles, the body tag, head tag will be included. This content will put here, right? So basically it's just like more like putting this register h1 here instead of this section. That's how it will work, right? So if we go ahead and check here now we can notice there's a small change here, right? Which means bootstrap is included. To confirm that, let's add a bootstrap class equal to text primary. Alright, so if I go ahead and refresh this, it changes to blue primary color, which is the bootstrap class. Cool. Now it's working, right? Let's write another route very quickly, which is going to be login route, and it should have login thing, and inside not controller just copy this. Oops, just copy this and change this to login and auth.login. Makes sense, right? So we can create go. Now we have them here. Remember, at layout and layouts.app. Alright, after that at section content end section. As simple as that. Psst, excuse me. Login page. Cool. Okay, now we have set up our layouts file, our database, and different things. I'll take a quick pause here and we'll start writing our forms and register logic. I'll see you in the next video.